Okay, we can already start, Father.
Sige po. Okay. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to our probably our first session. Just to provide short context, I've been meeting with the different schools and talking to both the chairs and the administrators, as well as some of the faculty, in light of this courseware development project that we would like to undertake as a university. So to start off, maybe can we just hear a round of introductions from everyone present in this meeting, just to indicate group name and then what department are we representing. So if that would be possible, parang then after that, then we could begin our session. Sige po, kuha na lang. Turo-turo na lang tayo. Parang mahirap sa i-arrange to sequentially kasi iba-iba naman yung tiles natin. Depende sa ating ano.
Ako na lang una, sir.
Okay.
Ako na lang mag-start, Father OG.
Okay.
Sige.
Sige po, Dean Randall.
Okay, so ako si Randel, no? Ako yung Dean ng School of Engineering. And actually, Father OG, no, proposed to have this meeting, no, to discuss about the courseware development applicable to the university, no. Okay, Dixie. Next.
Good morning, everyone. I am Nexlito Badillas from the Computer Engineering Department.
Morning,
Hello, everyone. Ma'am. Sorry kayo, Ma'am Jeanette. Sige ka muna, Ma'am.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeanette Banduta from the ECE department.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So I'm Mark from the Mechanical Engineering Department.
Good morning. I'm April Salazar. I'm from the ECE department.
April.
Hello, good morning. Hello, I am Renil Maroca, the Assistant Dean of the School of Engineering and Architecture. Good morning, Father.
Hi, Renil.
Hi, good morning, Father. Romar Sesen, Chair of Aerospace Engineering Department.
Romar.
Good morning. I'm Leia De Castro from the Chemical Engineering Department.
Hello, Leia.
Good morning, Father. Good morning, everyone. I am Ken Cosares from the Civil Engineering Department.
Hello, Ken.
Good morning, Father. I am Vishen Vicagalitan from the Chemical Engineering Department, also from the Engineering Sciences and Mathematics Department.
Eugene. I think.
Hello po. Good morning, Father. I'm sorry.
Sorry, nakamute si Andrew. Andrew and then Ottoman.
Okay po. Father, good morning. I'm Ottoman Montani from Robotics Engineering po.
Hello, Ottoman.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Espero from Electronics Engineering Department.
Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Father.
I think we just have two more. Albert and Pom.
Yes, sir. I'm Pom Nicolas from the Electrical Engineering Department.
And then si Albert. Okay. I think Albert might be experiencing some connectivity problems. So once again, good morning po to everyone. I'm Oji. And I'm currently I'm currently the assistant to our AVP for online education. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here in this meeting. What I'd like to do is maybe to introduce our courseware development project. I'm sure Dean Randall has already talked about this previously, but maybe I'd like this meeting to be an occasion for us to siguro brainstorm, propose solutions, and maybe jumpstart the process of courseware development in our school of engineering and architecture. So far, everyone present here is from the school, from the engineering departments. Wala yata akong na from the architecture, Dean Randall.
Hindi ata nag-ano pa. Maybe you can follow later.
Sige lang po. So anyway,
architect po later.
Sige po. So anyway, this meeting, sorry, I wasn't able to ask for your permission beforehand, but this meeting is also being live streamed through YouTube. I've posted the link here. So after this meeting, we could still verify siguro parang some of the points that would be raised in this meeting. Anyway, so allow me to just share the screen. Okay. So the courseware development project is really, in a sense, a response to the situation that we are in right now. I was thinking, maybe there's a different way of talking to a group of engineers like you that is very different when I'm talking to people from the School of Arts and Sciences or from the School of Education. I think they have other interests. And likewise, parang I'm thinking, parang as an engineer, parang what would be the best way to talk to you about this thing? And maybe I think the best way to talk about it is first to present the problem. And I think the problem that we have, if you can read from the slides here, is that if we've been listening at least to what our students are saying, our students are really losing confidence in our ability as a university to deliver what we had promised, that we can still provide quality Jesuit education despite the fact that we have already shifted online. Now, from our experience, not only from the School of Engineering, or not specifically from the School of Engineering Architecture, but certainly many of our faculty in this university have come up with many ways of teaching in this online environment. And many of the teaching strategies that we have adopted have not exactly been very optimal. So we have received feedback from, parang a really extreme range of teaching styles in this online environment. I don't think we need to delve into parang examples of that. No? But what we are seeing is that parang it's every man for himself, at least in terms of what we have been doing. So as a result of that, our students are not really learning as efficiently, and our teachers are not as effective online compared to how effective they were during our face-to-face setup. And in this new environment that we are in, it is technology that basically allows us to carry the same tasks that we were doing prior to the pandemic, and carry it through even through this online environment. So it seems that one of the problems that we're facing is that many of our faculties, siguro, I wouldn't say lack of facility, but perhaps discomfort with using technology, or maybe unfamiliarity with the technology that's available for online teaching, is making it difficult for this online education shift to succeed. And not only that, it's making it difficult for teachers to teach and also for students to learn. And I think parang we are bearing the brunt of the difficulty that has arisen because of this, of this situation. So therefore, parang if technology is the way by which we could conduct learning or education in this kind of environment, I think one of the things that we could focus on is really the platform or the medium that we will be using in order to be able to first teach effectively, and second, help students learn more efficiently in this online environment. So this courseware development project is really are one of the ways in which we are trying to address the problem that we are experiencing right now. One of the impacts of this problem is that many students, if you may have heard, are already expressing that they are not really exactly keen on enrolling for the second semester, and some are expressing that they will wait until the situation improves and we will revert to face-to-face teaching. But at the rate that we're going right now, that seems to be parang wishful thinking, di ba? And what we'd like to do is really to give back to the students what they have come to expect of the kind of education that we are providing in Ateneo de Davao University. Probably, di ba? Practically, I think one of the questions which is really quite difficult to answer during the first semester is that, ay kung puro ganito lang naman online, no? Kung lang mga teachers parang kumukuha lang naman ng YouTube videos tapos i-redirect lang to Cengage or to parang other platforms. Bakit kailangan pa namin magbayad ng pagkamahal-mahal na tuition para mag-aral sa Ateneo de Davao? I think it's a fair question, no? And really the question that what we're facing here is, what is the value that we are contributing to students enrolling in Ateneo de Davao in this time of the pandemic? I think one of the values that our value added in terms of them enrolling here is that we promise to give them a quality Jesuit education. Of course, at this point, parang it's kind of vague, parang what that means, no? But certainly when we were doing face-to-face teaching, what we had been doing in a face-to-face setup was taken as part of this Jesuit education that they're receiving through the Ateneo de Davao University. But at this point, parang it's really a big question mark. Sure, we have been trying to address the situation parang with our own initiatives and our own efforts, but it cannot be done just by solitary groups or parang solitary individuals. It has to be a group effort in a sense. Kaya this is, in a sense, parang I'm beginning with this by presenting you this problem that we're facing. Because I think parang an engineer's mindset is really parang, how do we solve this problem? And that's why I'm beginning with this to start off our discussion on courseware development. So the implication, as I mentioned, was that if we don't get the enrollment figures once again for the second semester and in the next semesters to come, we will feel its effects, its repercussions throughout the university. When we started to shift online, parang some of our, not exactly our faculty, but some of the personnel in the university have felt the impact of not being able to, or at least anticipating the drop in enrollment in the university. Some have been displaced from their jobs. And personally, ako parang I was greatly saddened by it. But we're facing this situation once again for the second semester and in the rest of the semesters to come, especially as we are still in this online education setup. How do we not only maintain our figures, but in fact increase our figures so that our university can remain sustainable even during the time of this pandemic? So in a sense, parang our solution to that problem, the solution that we offer through courseware development can perhaps solve many of the problems that we're facing. Of course, this is just one of the many things that we can do. For example, Dr. Romar Sese and Mr. Raul Lumapas parang are part of the team that's really advocating for greater internet connectivity. because this will be in support of this infrastructure will really be in support of our online education. So these efforts that we're doing, if we take them all together, will help us at least survive this pandemic as a university. And more especially in terms of how we can survive, parang given that for many of us, um, especially for some personnel, the university has been practically parang the source of their livelihood. And if we come to that point wherein we could not provide for everyone anymore, then parang a lot of us, we will all sink. If the university is a big ship, then we will sink like the Titanic. No? So therefore, it's a challenge. Sorry, and it's a challenge and a problem that we're facing. And that's why parang I'm presenting this to you in the School of Engineering and Architecture. Next, but given this problem, I think once again, parang I think we have to be clear in terms of parang the specifications in addressing this problem. One of the things which arises from the problem that I've just stated is that our instructional design, meaning what underpins the courseware that we will be developing, this instructional design must be distinctively Jesuit, which means that it has to incorporate the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm in terms of its design, so that despite the fact that it is in an online platform, it will still bear the hallmarks of Jesuit education, which is codified in the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. Next, so therefore, the courseware must abide by the IPP, and at the same time, it should also observe parang what is considered in the industry as the essentials of instructional design. But this instructional design, hopefully I'll be able to show it later, is embedded in the context of the IPP as a method that we use in a Jesuit university. So what are these essentials of instructional design? The very basics, whether you're designing for an face-to-face course or online course, it's about making sure that the outcomes, that the assessments are always aligned with the outcomes, and that the activities will always help the student in terms of attaining the outcomes for a module or for a course. That is the basic essentials of instructional design. Now, in the IPP framework, Ignatian Pedagogical Paradigm framework, or in terms of its method, this is also expressed in terms of the pre-lectio, lectio, and repetitio, which might be some of us are already familiar with, but later on we can talk more about it. The third specification is that if we take a look at what major courseware providers are offering, they don't really inundate their students with a lot of content. In fact, there's always a part there where other materials are being given as part of the further resources component. So in this time of the pandemic, I think this has to be taken into consideration as well. Not only because in terms of best practices, this is what many courseware providers are doing, but also because we are still in extraordinary circumstances. No? And what we want is that this online education experience will not contribute to a lot of mental health issues and will not aggravate existing mental health issues due to the pandemic. So that goes for students as well as for teachers as well. Fourth specification is that this courseware hopefully must encourage self-paced and flexible learning. I think part of the difficulty that we're experiencing is that we're still holding on to a traditional brick and mortar model, despite the fact that we are already going online, or that we are already online. In the literature on online education, they always emphasize the paradigm shift that is necessary in order to be able to maximize what online education can do. And deliver on the promises of online education. But apparently, it seems that we're still stuck. So that's why I think courseware can already move towards that direction, and administration could adapt also to the changes that are happening. No? If administration at this point could not envision that framework at the moment, no? But we could already move towards that direction. So therefore, the benefits of being in this online learning environment, no? Where learning could be done more independently, where learning can be done asynchronously, where learning is not dependent on location, we can take advantage of all these affordances as well. Fifth specification is that online courseware, at least in the United States, they have the national standards for quality online courses. No? And we're going to adapt that now in terms of our own courseware design as well. So in terms of how it should be like, you know, it ought to abide by quality standards for online courses as well. You know. Later, perhaps in our other sessions or through the Dean, I'd be able to share parang the tool that we have in terms of online standards checklist. The sixth specification is that this courseware is not meant to be an additional burden. But at this point, perhaps in the creation of this courseware, it will always be very difficult, at least for some faculty, because it means sitting down and really thinking through what would be most effective given the context of the students at this point now. It also involves working to with great detail in terms of making sure that our face-to-face instructional strategies could always be converted into something that is more adaptable for online learning. But this courseware should be designed in such a way that it will eventually free up faculty, that we will not be tied to our usual teaching schedules, that we will not be harassed by continuing this kind of synchronous teaching tapos without our students really being there to give us the kind of feedback that we were used to when we were teaching face to face. It should free up faculty so that we could do other things, no? And not be bound to the teaching that happens on the synchronous teaching that happens in online education, so that later on our roles become also begin to change, no, from a source of information, no, to facilitation, because all the content which we will design and provide the students will be there, and there will be a greater mentoring that will happen, and perhaps the teacher takes on a more facilitative role, no? But we will not be bound again to the structures which used to bind us when we were in a brick and mortar model. I think one of the advantages to this is really, at least for faculty who have taken advantage of their of designing their courseware, they're actually freed up for other things, for other engagements, most especially for research. No? So this is something also that we would like our courseware to provide, at least as a benefit for our teachers. Next specification is that it should be standardized. I think this is a concern that Dean Randall has always raised in terms of courseware development. Right now, part of the standardization effort is that we are encouraging our courses and course developers to develop their courseware in Moodle. You might ask why Moodle at this point? Because first, we cannot afford Canvas, which is, at least for some faculty, more user-friendly in terms of user interface. But as a benefit for us, it's open source. Secondly, parang it's highly customizable, highly configurable, and yun, parang these are the benefits of using this, no? And many of the things that we used to do through Google Classroom, parang can are easily can easily be implemented using Moodle. No? At the same time, courseware should also be accessible. One of the things later on in future iterations of the courseware that we will be creating, that we should provide for accessibility and inclusivity. That means, as exemplified in other courseware, that if you have a video, for example, then you can have an audio of that video, or perhaps even a transcript of the video that is being shown as part of the lesson. But this cannot be achieved, siguro, in the first iteration of the courseware that we'll be creating. But eventually, we want this to be part of what would of the courseware that we will be developing for the university in the university. And then lastly, I think we could not ignore the fact that especially in this information age, that design, aesthetic design and delivery of the content parang always go together. That's why it has led to the emergence of certain fields like information design. Before, they used to call it just graphic design, but now it's information design, which is really how do you design information in such a way that it creates that impact and that it is absorbed by other persons. So again, this is another course, parang another specification, another challenge, no, in terms of the design of the courseware. So not only is it steeped in terms of its pedagogy and instructional design, not only does it take into account the best practices in terms of how courses are to be sequentially organized and chunked into bite-sized pieces, but it should also take into account the visual aspect of it, to encourage greater interactivity, and also to encourage students to really learn on their own if the content becomes more and more engaging. So having said that, let me just pause for now and perhaps ask if there are questions already that arise from the presentation so far. Kasi unlike in the other schools, they're not very familiar, right? Especially when you talk about software development, or in this case, courseware development. What we're doing is we're not really creating software from scratch. I don't think we could do that at this point. No. What we're saying is that we have an existing LMS. We would like to take advantage of the tools within that LMS to be able to create really courseware, which is really software which contains instructions and instructional strategies. No, so that's really what we're doing when we're talking about courseware. So as I said, parang unlike in the other schools where I had to go through the process of explaining it, maybe at this point, parang I'd like to hear your thoughts, kasi as engineers, parang feeling ko perhaps you already have ways in terms of how we could do this. No, I just offered the problem, I just offered the specifications, but at this point, parang I'd like to hear from you in terms of whether this could be done or not. No, I don't want to prescribe the same method that I prescribe in the other schools, because parang feeling ko parang your engineers, parang the same principles that I actually use in terms of proposing what they will do, I think parang is almost second nature to you as well. But these are the things, kumbaga, that we're asking from the courseware that is being designed in the other courses. So maybe ang kwan lang dito, perhaps the only gap, I think, is that when we're talking about instructional design and when we're talking about what would make it distinctively Jesuit, perhaps that's the only thing that I could enter into, no? So that parang we could incorporate that in the process that we will undertake in order to design the courses. So maybe at this point, parang I'll pause for your comments, and thoughts and reactions maybe. Dean Randall,
Father, before we proceed, maybe we can also ask the participants who are not able to introduce themselves, no? When we started the activity. Maybe we can ask those who just came, no, in the link or in the conference. So maybe Sir Policarpio and Sir Musso.
Good morning, Father. I'm Architect Wilfredo Policarpio, Department Chair of the Architecture. Good morning.
Good morning po.
So, kinsa tong wala pa nakapa-introduce?
Good morning, Sir Roge. Kid Bation here from Industrial Engineering Department.
Hi, Kid.
Good morning, Father. I'm Joseph Villanueva from the Electronics Engineering Department.
Hello, Joseph. Good morning.
Good morning po.
Sige po,
Okay, so thank you.
Dean Randall.
So, okay. Actually, Father, it's good with us, no, for the engineering, because actually, even before the COVID, I think all of the faculty already are using the PowerPoint presentation. So meaning most of us already have these materials, no? But I think the difference now is about really the delivery of these materials, no? Siguro for me, no, personally, maybe we can also have a webinar or trainings on how our faculty can really develop parang yung YouTube type, no, meaning scripting at the same time yung materials to be introduced, or meaning they only have to attach their words, no, a discussion on the PowerPoint, so that we can use this one, so that we don't have a problem anymore, no, about really developing the materials. Kasi I think that's the problem, no, yung about really discussion, then they simply have to repeat their classes or topics on other sections. In fact, it's all the same, no. And maybe if you already have this one, then the students can easily access the recorded, or maybe with the PowerPoint and also the script, the records, then they can access this information at any given time, no, kung ano availability ng estudyante. And it's easier, no, for the students to learn. Example, if they could not understand about this one, then they simply have to repeat, no, the discussion or the presentation with the script, or with the recorded information.
Thank you, Dean Randall. There's a question here raised by Andrew. He says he's curious as to how will the courseware account for the integration of lab into the online system, since teaching engineering is applying theories into practical applications. I think at this point, parang I really don't have answers for that yet, no. What we're doing in the School of Nursing, where they also have parang a need to yung practical applications, is we're trying to develop parang simulation systems, no. But I don't know how applicable that is in terms of engineering. That's why I think maybe kailangan pag-usapan pa to. Kasi from your level, I think you I would admit parang I don't know exactly ano yung needs from the engineering side, no. But certainly in the School of Nursing, what we're doing is that yung parang may branching kami na system na gustong i-develop, wherein parang all the practical aspects that used to be done by students could be simulated parang in a virtual community with a virtual patient, no. But that's for the School of Nursing, so I don't know yet. That's why parang part of this courseware development process is identifying first courses which we could readily convert, no, and at the same time siguro start discussing the more difficult courses that to be translated into parang online courses. Kumbaga, would it really be possible, no? I don't have the answers to that yet because I'm not familiar with which courses would require that. But perhaps that is something that you could parang help me with, parang in terms of ano ba yung at this point, what can be done and what seems parang difficult to do at this point muna.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you for the question, Andrew.
Father OG, as regards doon sa laboratory ba, kasi actually before we had a plan instead really of using our facilities during the scheduled time, parang we can assign somebody in the laboratory, then we simply have to schedule our students to go to the lab, no, on a particular period, parang scheduled siya. In a way, we don't have enough equipment naman sa lab, no, for the students to use. So in the past, actually, when you have a lab, example, if you only have 5 equipment, then you only have to ask 5 groups to first perform, no? The problem is with those 5 groups who cannot perform. So why not schedule natin, spread natin for the whole day? You simply have to have that schedule so that students can ask permission to visit the facility, no? Then they have to perform their experiment. And for those students who are outside Davao City, maybe they have to join, no, with a group who are also in Davao City. Para bang it's a teamwork. Then they simply have to discuss it online. And they can provide feedback, no? Siguro we can design something parang ano siya, no? Instructional design din for this laboratory na parang ano lang schedule, no? Hindi necessary na talagang they have to come at the same time, no? Para and then we have to assign somebody to help them or manage them or to supervise them once they're in the school.
Yeah. In a sense, parang what you're proposing is parang a kind of a blended learning, but this time parang we just have to take into consideration halimbawa yung all the restrictions that is being imposed on us because of this COVID. But if we could schedule it accordingly, I think parang that's workable man. No? And we could discuss that at the level of so that it's not really a one-size-fits-all solution, but it's really attending to specific needs which where we could balance siguro both yung need for safety and at the same time the need for certain courses to be able to provide opportunities for students to really apply what they learn. I'm open to that. I'm open
anyway,
to that.
mayroon namang yeah, okay.
Just to share, Father, there is a just a background. I'm a teaching assistant here at Virginia Tech. What they did with the laboratory is that, for example, sa aerospace engineering nila, dili man gyud pwede gud mo adto dito, or the students are not really allowed to go to the laboratory, especially during the peak of the COVID situation. The lab assistants were in the lab, like nagdala sila og camera na kanang communication system and all, and then we kind of like assigned teams, like the student teams, to different schedules across the week, and then kanang musturya sila sa lab assistant, and ang lab assistant ang muhimo unsay dapat himuon sa lab based sa instruction. So pakita sa lab assistant ang mga equipment, like ang readings and all, niya sila ang mo set up based pod sa sugo sa students o sa instructor. So gwapo po siya na set up, no, in that sense. But I think it can only go as far as that. Murag lisod kayo i-realize ang interaction with the equipment and interaction with katong actual good gani na paggunit sa mga components and all. Pero I think pwede siya mahimong alternative.
Yeah. Actually, kasi parang I've been working with the School of Nursing. Parang ganun nga ang kanila. Parang remote instruction ng students eh. And then, so somebody performs it. Tapos yung is depending on the choices that students will make, parang may resulting outcome, no? In terms of what they'll make. No? But that seems to be doable man, no? Kung if we have something like that, no? And given na ngayon, halimbawa, part of the problem that we have is imposed na naman ng curfew until 2020. No, parang kumbaga conditions are making it more and more difficult to really carry out that the kind of instruction where they get to really hold manually parang what they're supposed to do, no? But that seems to be a good idea as well, no? And if it's working there, mukhang madali lang naman, parang kung ganun na klase na setup, di ba? We could just put in cameras there and then have somebody do it.
Kana lang, Father, ang crucial part is that dapat ang lab assistant kay pag-versed pod sa instructional design, like kailangan siya kabalo unsa to nga unsa ang concepts, like kay for example unsa to paggamit na equipment, like pag ang output ato para unsa to para ma-communicate niyo well with the students pod.
Kasi binuangan sa student mo bungkag dayon. Sayo pang instruction niya tuyoon. But anyway, I think that's a good, that's exciting.
That's why Father, before nag-ano kami na possible mayroong full-time na faculty, no? So as assistant at laboratory assistant, parang laboratory supervisor. So sila yung mag-ano talaga doon sa lab, then we have assistants kasi yung assistants naman natin is hindi naman graduate yun, no? Ano lang, mga vocational sila. So hindi rin po pwede, no? Actually, we need a faculty to be assigned in the lab, then to be helped by the laboratory assistants. So ang maganda doon kasi ang faculty will be in the laboratory for the entire period. I mean, from morning to afternoon. Then parang if lahat siguro ng example, I am teaching electronics 1, then somebody's teaching electronics 2. So sasabihin lang ng faculty doon sa lab supervisor ano yung mga activities, no, na gawin nila for this particular laboratory na activity. Then they have to schedule that one, no? Depende na sa na availability ng equipment and then availability ng
I think things like that parang we could discuss parang at the level of the school, so that parang it could be supported by policy, parang that can be made, no, and which directly addresses parang the solutions that you're offering, and so we could really implement it parang at the level of something that's really school specific or even discipline specific, no? So pwede, I think pwede ano yun, I mean, we could work with that, I think.
To add on, Father, dun sa comment ni Andrew, since nandito rin ako for teaching assistant, and my other teaching assistant classmate who is handling laboratories dito sa Stony Brook, is that ang ginagawa namin is instead na online yung yung pag-video, it is parang pre-recorded na ang video in our case. So all the instructions and all the readings are done by the teaching assistant that time. And then the interpretation will be done by the students as part of their report. And to follow na lang din para sa course learning objective, binago nila to match yung kailangan lang na i-deliver ng student. So before, since meron ng mga nakasulat na sa course learning objective nila na able to perform, pero hindi nila na-perform naman kasi wala naman nag-perform, di man sila mismo nag-perform, they will just change the course learning objective in such a way that nandun lang yung interpretation ng data or anything na pwede lang magawa even without the access sa equipment. Pero ngayon, since medyo naman ngayon sa South Korea, babalik naman din sila for so pwede na kami mag face-to-face. So, pero before, yan yung ginawa namin last semester. So ngayon, may pre-recorded video na for their instruction, at the same time yung demonstration sa videos, sa pag-perform sa experiment, and in the future, pwede na nila i-perform yan in case na gusto na nila i-perform yan. Pero for now, what they did is that they changed the course learning objective to match yung pwede lang ma-deliver ng students.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I think it's good na parang we're learning from the experiences that you're having while you're overseas, and seeing many of these applications, in fact, parang are things that we're already beginning to implement, in our own courses and in some of the other courses as well. Ang kuan lang natin is yun nga, parang can we make it parang a concerted effort to be able to deliver that, parang adjusting of course depending on the needs of a course or the needs of a particular discipline, no? Pero from the university's perspective, no, so of course there's the technical challenge in terms of how that could be implemented. There's also the pedagogical challenge, in terms of, you know, parang how could we fuse parang the conventions of teaching a discipline with the hallmarks that characterize Jesuit education. So yun yung on the one level, isang challenge, and then on the other level is taking into account parang all these concrete applications or concrete solutions that we have seen in our own experiences, no, and parang putting it all together so that we could have we could create a more responsive and adaptive na courseware. What I've done, if I may just show you something briefly. So sorry. Okay. What we have done, at least in the other schools, no, was to really explain first parang what the IPP was, and to talk about how the IPP could be implemented as an instructional design in the course that they're developing. So first, parang we're talking about how different the learning environment was, and here you have some of the affordances of the online learning environment, no. Maybe for many of us, parang we're already familiar with this, no. And the challenge, as I mentioned, was to take into account parang what's the best practice in terms of instructional design, meaning the focus to be attended to aligning the assessments with the outcomes and the activities with the assessments and with the outcomes. But seeing it in the context of the IPP, wherein this same framework really, yung the outcomes part is really what you will find in the pre-lecture part. The activities part is really what you find in the lecture part, and the assessments would be in the repetition part, no. Now, some of these terms siguro, especially if we have not been introduced to IPP yet, no, may sound like parang unfamiliar terms, no. But and that's why maybe parang this might be part of what we might need to be refreshed on, so that we could be speaking the same language in the university in terms of parang what we would expect as from the various disciplines, in terms of whether it is still aligned with what we would consider as Jesuit education. So all of this framework, which you can see in the essential elements of instructional design, are really expressions of the IPP, which talks about the context, the experience, reflection, action, and evaluation. I want to expound on this later on, because right now I just want to see and listen to proposals that you have in mind, no? And we can talk about what our next steps would be, no? So all of this can be phrased in terms of questions, no? And these are the guiding questions in terms of how our instructional design could be formulated. In a sense, this is the spirit that underlies the actual courseware that we will be making. If you can imagine this in terms of the whole pedagogy in Jesuit education, what is happening is that in Jesuit pedagogy, what is happening is that the teacher provides the learner with an experience that will lead him closer to the truth. So in a sense, our courseware development process is really taking into account the context of the learner and creating a learning environment which exemplifies this, creating an experience, providing a means for students to reflect on their experience, providing opportunities to act on what they have learned, and providing a student to assess his overall learning experience. all of that, in a sense, is what is covered in a typical module or in a typical course that we're trying to develop. No? So what I presented in the other schools is this a sample template, wherein all these components, overview, learning outcomes, required learning activity, reflection, learning assessment, further resources, and evaluation, are actually components that emphasize, that highlight the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. No? So in the concrete, when teaching a course, no, um, typically it's designed in this way. No, if we were working on the IPP syllabus before, we already saw this. No, the pre-lecture prepares the student. The lecture is the actual learning experience. The repetitio is where you enforce the learning of a student. Of course, there are overriding principles in terms of the design of the courses. No, and this is why we're talking about making sure that the course exhibits cura personalis. How? By making sure that the courses are designed taking into account the context or where our learners are coming from, especially in this time of the pandemic. Second is non multa sed multum, which focuses on mastery. This has always been a hallmark of Jesuit education. No? That's why it's always exemplified in the adage, few concepts, but many, many exercises. No? I'm sure the conventions of our discipline would also take into account that we teach a concept and then we have many applications of it. In terms of the third part, which is tantum quantum, what it means is that everything that we use in terms of online education has to be used in as much as it helps the student. So I think the focus of the IPP is really our design of the courses should always be geared and oriented towards our students, no? In as much as it helps them. If it hinders education, if it becomes an obstacle to learning, then we discard it. But in as much as it helps their learning, then we adapt it. So these are all principles which are at the back of our minds, no? Especially when we're creating a course using the IPP. So once again, parang in Moodle, parang this implementation could be something as simple as this typical module. Wherein, once again, the overview could be a simple video of you talking about parang what this video is about. This is the pre-recorded videos that you can have, and then a learning outcome, an expression of what the student is supposed to learn in a particular module, and then you have there a variety in terms of activities and resources that you could use, no, in order to teach the subject without you having to teach it synchronously. But you could also put in a part where you can really have that kind of interaction, no, depending again, tantum quantum, as the need arises or as much as it helps the students. But I think the two things here would make it distinctively Jesuit would be first the inclusion of the reflection part, which in this implementation is really a point where students are made to reflect and think about the content that has been taught. Now, this reflection is different from the assessment that we do, because this is just meant to instill the habit of thinking, of just pausing and looking back at what somebody has learned. The other, in a sense, addition to this IPP-based module is the inclusion of evaluation. No? Evaluation here is as compared to reflection. If reflection is focused on the content which is to be learned within a module, evaluation is really a student helping a student assess how he is learning in the module. So it's not focused on the content that is being learned, but it's focused, kumbaga, on a meta structure of learning. No, how well is he learning? Not so much whether he has learned something, whether he has learned the content that is being taught, but he's assessing parang his facility for learning something easily, or for his difficulty in terms of learning certain things within that module. So if you look at this, parang all these components are actually parang expressive of the IPP in terms of its pre-lecture, lecture, and repetition na structure. No? And if you apply the principles, what underlies this entire learning experience is a consideration of the student's context. In other words, in the IPP, where we're beginning is not a question of what is the content that I want to teach. But in the IPP, the starting point is the question, who are the learners that I'm teaching? Who will I be teaching? No? So that's what distinguishes parang Jesuit education, parang right from the very start. Because the focus is really addressing first parang the kind of persons that you will be talking to, the kind of persons that you'll be teaching. So this context, after this context, when we talk about the experience part in the IPP, it's really, generally speaking, talking about the entire learning experience. No? Specifically, you can talk about the experience part of the IPP in terms of the required activities and resources that you would have for the students. The reflection part could be conceived in terms of that reflection itself, or perhaps reflection could also take the form of a learning assessment. In other words, it could be implemented that way as well. No? When you talk about the action part, which is really where all the learning that the student experiences has to be concretized in one way or another. And this is where the action component of the IPP comes in. Because whether it's a test or whether it's another activity wherein a student is now able to concretely apply what he has learned, that becomes once again a hallmark of this IPP course. No? And then the latter part is the evaluation. Evaluation could be conceived in terms of the formal evaluation that you make to assess students' learning. But evaluation in the sense that we're using here as a separate component is really, once again, talking about how the student can assess his overall learning experience. Now, the data coming from this evaluation part will also be fed back to the teachers so that the teachers will be able to take this feedback, and incorporate it in further iterations of the module. So he or she could design it better, at least for the students that he will be teaching to. And all the other things, parang I guess the need for interactivity, which is again a component of this online learning platform. Sorry. So once again, parang taking advantage of what we call as adaptive release. So all of these are just affordances of Moodle, which many of us are already familiar with. And then I think yon parang in the specifications that I mentioned earlier, parang how do we design the course so that it's chunked properly. So part of this is really asking parang what is the natural break in every content that we're trying to teach. And then how big would a chunk be? Parang that depends, of course, on our understanding of our learners and the complexity of a topic. By breaking it down into chunks, literally how we implement this in the course is by talking in terms of hours spent. The concept is called time on task, which is the total learning time spent by a student in a course. So if you're designing a course, we take into account instructional time, meaning parang all the lectures that you make or the time that you make the time that you spend when you're checking a paper or responding to feedback or responding to emails from a student. All of that becomes part of instructional time. But we also have to consider the time spent by the student on accomplishing this task. So I think part of the difficulty that we're experiencing why people are stressed is because we're not conscious in designing a course of this particular concept. Kumbaga, people are doing so many things so that the required number of hours lang talaga to teach a course effectively. Let's say you have 135 hours needed in order to learn a course. Sometimes it can bloat to 300 or 400 hours because they're not conscious in terms of the duration of the tasks that we're actually assigning for students. So all of these things, I think, are really just parang details in terms of that courseware development process that we're talking about. So in a sense, parang this is where we're heading, no? Parang in terms of the process, parang in terms of how we could do it, no? There's another slide that basically shows that, but I think that has already been explained by Dean Randall. I think at this point, parang we're thinking of parang how could we now proceed, no, with this, with all this input parang at the back of our minds, no. I think first, ang concretely nito is, can we identify first the courses that we could already start developing, no? If this is what the other schools have done, they started muna with courses that are catering to a lot of cohorts, no? And then moving down to courses which are being developed by or being taught by a single faculty to a small group of students, no? So and then from there, parang, you know, parang we could already parang subject it to the same process, no, of designing the course, and then after designing it, parang testing it, no? Testing its prototype. After testing its prototype, then we make the other make the other changes that are needed, and then we deploy it, and then we subject it to another evaluation, and then we feed it back into the whole process, no? So parang I didn't go into that anymore, because I think parang that's almost secondary nature to you as engineers, no? So I don't know. Inran up.
Ay, Father, may isang
Ay, Robert.
lang.
Yes.
Father, kasi I think this is something that you mentioned earlier kanina, di ba, na placing it in Moodle, di ba? And given the courses that we have in SEA, some of these courses are highly mathematical, which means we have to use for equations, making equations. And based on experience this first semester, sobrang ang hirap especially if you're showing derivation of equations, kung paano siya pinakita, sobrang hirap niyang gawin sa Moodle. It uses LaTeX, which is on its own medyo challenging na. But if you're repeating the same process all over again, medyo mahirap siyang gawin sa Moodle. At some point, I had to resort na maghanap ng textbook with the equations, tapos copy na lang yung equation and everything. Kasi yun yung nakakaubos ng oras. So siguro I'm saying that for the courses I handled this first semester, but I think other engineering courses have that challenge. So it's either we write it in a tablet or in a slate and then record it, and then yun yung i-upload, or take screenshots or clip it from online textbooks or online text, or program it in Moodle. Kasi if we're going towards a courseware development talaga, mas maganda naman talaga na course embedded siya, parang hindi siya parang lifted out from something else. Yun nga lang, it would really take a lot of time, nakakaubos ng oras. So siguro if there would be a way that mathematical equations can be programmed easier in Moodle, that would be a significant help, especially for the courses like in ESM and so on. So yun siguro ang based on the experience I had this first semester, yun yung isang pinaka-challenging talaga. So it's either we record ourselves doing it on a board, or we record it doing it on a slate and so on. So yun lang yung magiging options talaga that we see so far.
Okay, thank you, Romer. I guess at this point, parang let's stick with the easiest, most convenient solution, no? That's why siguro at kaya nga parang I think we need to really identify what we'd like to focus on talaga and develop parang more intensively. But in terms of solution, parang diba, hanap talaga tayo ng pinakamadali muna.
Yes, Father. Oh, so the simplest talaga is find a textbook with the equations and then copy, clip the equations and attach it sa image. It's still time consuming, pero significantly less compared to what compared to programming it directly in Moodle.
So I think that could buy us time to really look for, para easier implementation sa Moodle. But for now, yung first iteration natin would really be something like that. No? Yun nga, tinitingnan ko din when you first mentioned that over dinner, tinignan ko ibang ganun yung ginawa ng professor, parang nakaano na nga yung camera sa baba tsaka mano-mano.
Yes. So yun naman. I mean, there would be ways, pero kasi if looking at the long term, it would look very good on the courseware if everything seems embedded.
Yes.
Kumbaga parang merged together, and it's not like it wouldn't appear like copy paste lang. Pero siguro for future for future iterations of that, we can do that.
Yeah. Thank you. So any other comments po and concerns that we might have? Siguro ang first one ko parang would this be doable? And second is siguro parang administratively speaking, parang how do we timeline this? How do we account for some of the things that we'll be focusing on? No? And perhaps maybe parang school-wide, parang we can already start implementing these principles because eventually we're hoping to move towards that direction. No? Of course, there are other issues involved here which we could keep on discussing. That's why parang this isn't the last of the conversations that we will have. But I always say na parang what we're doing right now is we're building the bridge as we're crossing it. No? And I'm certainly open to suggestions and comments, feedback that you might have. No? Kasi nambangay ra gud taan no? Tulungan lang tayo no? Para in terms of what we can do.
Father G.
Yes, din London.
Sa second semester yung natin no, gawa ng courseware for the second sem.
Ngayon kasi yung SAS ngayon ang i-prioritize yung mga core courses tsaka GE courses. So all the other schools will begin their courseware development process by the second sem in preparation for the next term.
Okay. Pero yung gagamitin sa second sem, anong natin preparation doon?
Kwan talaga muna.
Siguro Father no kasi lahat naman talaga ng klase dapat may online na materials. Why not i-progressive natin yung kasi nga it's not necessary na matapos talaga yung materials within one. Pwede naman every week mayroon tayong talaga progression no doon sa nila doon sa materials. Siguro no with regards to sa development, maybe we can start with yung yung subjects na common din sa ibang mga engineering programs. Example yung computer fundamentals no. And this should be parang develop with siguro 3 to 4 faculty members who are teaching the same subject no. Parang ganun siguro kasi nga it's easier kung mas marami kayo in the development of the materials. Pero ang ko dito Father yung kasi yung ownership ng materials no. Kasi nga they are going to spend time to develop this one no. Then others will simply use the materials no. And I think it's not fair also to the faculty who are also developing the materials kasi nga it will consume their time. So paano natin yung natin dito?
Okay.
Baka incentives or anong deload parang ganun ba?
Yes. In SAS this is what we did no. Parang we're really taking a team-based approach in terms of online course production. So that means in this case parang assigning typically when you're developing courseware, you have course developers, the development team members, an instructional designer and a course technician no. What we have done in SAS is to provide a deload especially for those who will be attending just to courseware development. In fact, parang in our discussion with the ABP was even willing to give a full deload for faculty who will be focusing and totally on the technical aspects or give for example, a 3-unit deload for faculty who will be working on their courseware. So that could be arranged in Randall kasi that's actually what we are doing right now with SAS and also with SBG. Sa SBG, may faculty sila nag-deload parang as instructional designer to oversee the courseware development process. Now, in terms of the question of ownership, right now I'm just proceeding from yung what is being done in other Jesuit universities in terms of the application of the intellectual property na code. Pero I won't be able to talk about parang what we have at this point. Parang I have not really met yet with our to discuss it, no. But certainly parang that's on the table right now, as I have mentioned during our President's Council, to review our policies in terms of that, especially right now that we are going through our courseware development project.
So actually, Father, I mentioned this one sa URC, no, about really ownership. Kasi nga we have naman the UPO, no, University Publication Office. And I think this parang activity is similar to making a book, no? Mas mas comprehensive nga to compared to making a book, no? An example, if we can do this one, then if we have really to recognize the owners of this, then they can maintain, they can maybe upgrade, they can make version 1, version 2, no, of the materials. No, para they can really do it parang more efficient, no, for the students. And I think we already have the mechanism of that. I don't know about the amount, no, or about, because actually under the book development we have royalty to the faculty working on the materials, no? So parang they're doing this kasi nga we have to encourage faculty so that of course they will really do it better, no, compared to just an ordinary materials. And I think the deload is a good option, but maybe about ownership is really important, no, for this faculty. When in fact, no, I mentioned before about our parang participation with the Child Right program, but when I discussed this one with URC, and we asked actually Jason Occidental to present to us about ownership. So actually that's why we withdraw, no, from this activity, because this is copyrighted supposedly by us, but this will be owned by CHED, no? Parang that's why it's not good, no, for the university to give these materials to CHED. That's why we did not really so that others will keep.
Sige po, kindly continue, Dean Randall.
Pinaputol, sorry. So parang ganun siguro, Father, with regards doon sa mga topics, we will be meeting, no, the chairpersons. We have a separate meeting. Then we can provide you feedback, no, kung ano yung topics na we will focus also, no, with with members also in its topic.
Yeah. How we done it in the other schools was that after talking with the faculty, the chairs decided na they'll be focusing on these courses. They've assigned teams to attend to it. And then after that, parang they set their own timelines. Right now for SAS, in fact, parang for the second semester, they want many, at least siguro mga about 80% of the courses won't be finished, the entire courseware talaga. So what we have decided on was that they will complete muna the first 6 weeks, no, at least 1/3 of the course that they're going to teach, no, and then use that time to keep on developing para by the end of it, parang they'll already have a complete courseware. Now, with the exception of 2 subjects or 3 subjects, they can complete the entire na by the second semester. Halimbawa, yung ethics 100, no, nakakuha na sila. They've already assigned it to their faculty. Everyone's focusing on the particular topic. All the faculty teaching that subject are involved in the course development process, no? So hinati-hati nila, and then the courseware will be built by their course technicians, and then parang redistributed to them for the second semester.
Hello, Father
Father OG, kasi
Ah.
we are not starting from scratch. We already have all the materials, no?
Yeah.
Ano naman, mayroon na tayong existing materials na ginagamit. Actually, we already have for all even semesters, no? Baka we can discuss kung ano yung procedure natin to gather those materials para gawa na lang natin muna kung paano i-improve sila. Kasi mas mahirap kung i-start na naman tayo from natin. In fact, mayroon naman lahat sila yung materials, no?
Yeah. In fact, sa SOE, yung the same shed project that they did, no, they're going to use that. Parang 15 subjects yung nagko-author, sila Bell tsaka sila Eding, for teacher education. So that's now their starting point for this process, no. So in other words, yeah, they're not starting from scratch. In the other courses that are being developed, yun din parang as you can see, parang outlined in the steps that I've been able to share. Parang may content preparation workflow, no? So what they did was they collated and reviewed all the existing materials. They conducted the parang context analysis, and then parang reviewed again the course topics and course outcomes. Basically, parang all the things necessary in order to just prepare the course for online conversion. They've done parang as a course development team, no. So ang structure na ginamit in the other schools was the deans basically appointed project managers. In this case sa SAS, ang project managers were the assistant deans, no. And then they identified the courses which are being headed by course developers, who is the lead subject matter expert, gathering basically all the faculty teaching these GE courses, and all of them contributed to the creation of the course, no. And then once the blueprint is done, parang what we did, we observed parang the templates that we're now using, my tool that I've shared with them, and then that will be passed on to the course technicians who will be building these courses for them. Kasi nga, part of the difficulty that they have is that many are not very technically proficient. So nag-train kami ng ibang set ng people who will be more technically proficient with Moodle. So all the content lang, videos that they produce as lessons, tapos they give the instructions dun sa template na pre-provide as a toolkit, no? And then ang nag-implement yan into an online course yung mga course technicians.
Okay.
So pwede siguro pag-usapan niyo kung what would be best, no? I did not propose this setup to you kasi feeling ko parang I'm sure you can come up with a better way of doing it, no?
Yeah, by the way, Father, kasi actually ang issue natin ngayon is yung about sa summative assessment at saka yung formative assessment. Baka siguro i-clarify natin yung grading system natin. Katulad ng i-inyo, di ba? Finally, talagang malaki yung percentage, but we have to consider yung research kasi parang nakalimutan na natin dito yung ibang mga requirements. Example, yung reports, reflections, kasi points naman talaga yun eh. That's why in our final grade, supposedly, we have to have that summative exam. Then supposedly, lahat ng activities prior to summative exam are formative assessments actually, no? Yung thesis, report, something like that. Siguro we can look into that, and that could be part siguro sa ITP natin. Kasi mahirap talaga implement online kung we have to do it, parang formative din assessment, parang it will be, a very complex process din para sa atin. And sa ngayon talagang yun ang question, no? Yung sabi nila takot sila na 100% yung SA. When in fact, SA is only part really of the overall evaluation of the performance of the students per semester. Baka we can discuss about grading system, no? In this COVID period.
Yeah. Tingin ko, Rans, yung kuha natin yan, as we develop the course, kasi nga, I think parang nahirapan to imagine parang how that could be implemented, no? Pero once we build the system, let's build it and then let's make that proposal. Kasi unless we could show them a way na this is how we could implement it, no? I think mas madali yung yung kasi parang di ba yung napag-usapan sa council, parang mahirap talaga eh, hindi realistic, di ba? So but I think we can address that by implementing it right now in the way we design the courses.
Father Oji,
Hi, Renil. Hello.
Renil Baroka.
Go
May
ahead,
concern
Renil.
lang po, Father, doon sa, yes, yung sa deloading, yes, I'm happy to hear that meron tayong deloading. But our concern is, meron tayong yung YLC, may deload na rin yung NATO units. Maybe we can also tackle that one, no? Kasi malaking ano din yun sa amin. And then, malaking parang kawalan din, no, sa faculty load namin. And then I'm not sure if our faculty members are still willing to become or to perform or to serve as YLC by next semester, given that we have another parang bagong responsibilities na naman ngayon for the development of the courseware or course pack or module. So yun lang siguro, Father, ang concern ko. Baka pwedeng mapag-usapan din.
Sige. Thank you, Rel. I'll raise that with the ABP, especially sa YLC na ano. Yeah, I'll raise that concern as well. Right now kasi parang wala siya sa aking scope, no? So I could not really make a decision on that. But I'll raise that and then we'll try to see parang how that can be addressed.
Yes, Father. And then another thing, Father, is addition lang. Most of our faculty members have loads or number of preparations more than 4. So iba may 4, may 5. Sometimes meron pang 6. So yun ang problema natin. Medyo mabigat na rin yung course pack or module development kasi I have already experienced preparing a course pack, no? Yung sa CHED. Pwede siguro, Father, parang staggered lang yung ano natin, requirement example for all the faculty members. Pwedeng yung first, yung requirement na natin example for the first part, pwedeng good for 1 month or 4 weeks. And then meron na naman, parang ganun lang siguro. Kasi pag i-require natin lahat yan, surrender talaga ang faculty members. It's very difficult to prepare a course package especially, no? Marami.
Yeah, thank you, Renil. In fact, parang that's parang I'm in a sense parang placing that decision parang on the shoulders of the deans, no? So we'll work with what you think is doable, no? So that's why parang ito din parang we're saying na we're just focusing parang staggered din nga, hindi lahat ng courses inatake, we're just focusing on key courses, and then even in the key courses that are being developed, hindi siya yung entire kaagad pero we're just taking it in phases as well, no? So kumbaga ang kwan lang natin dito is pag-usapan natin, let's see what is doable. And let's see what is favorable to everyone, and then yun parang just give me feedback in terms of what you propose, tapos yun we will work with that, no? That's the approach that I'm taking so far in my discussions with the other schools, no? Dean Handel,
Okay, Father,
you
thank you.
wanted to say something?
Father, isang ano lang, just an additional
yes,
comment.
Romar, go ahead.
Kasi you mentioned, di ba, that the priority for this semester is yung mga GE courses. Pero I think there would also be a value if for those courses na kaya nang maggawa ng course pack for this semester, this coming second semester, siguro i-attempt na kahit isang subject lang, para at least the faculty would have an experience on developing the course pack. Tapos pagdating ng summer, if walang load or minimal load lang, kumbaga yung learnings coming from second semester can be translated agad into making the course pack for the first semester, kesa yung tapos maramihan na or more na, kasi kesa yung dun pa lang sila sa first semester gagawa ng course pack tapos maninibago pa or mag-a-adjust pa. So kumbaga parang trial period for those na kaya this second semester, hindi naman lahat pero at least if kaya naman, or I think the faculty thinks na kayang maggawa ng course pack na at least one, then I think there would be a big value in terms of learning and experience in making the course packs.
Okay. Thank you, Romar, for bringing that up. In fact, in the other schools, that's what they did. Sa School of Education, they said that they could start working on 15. School of Nursing, they've identified, no, wala naman silang, they're not handling any core courses, but they've identified 3 courses that they want to parang try this courseware development project with. No? Sa School of Business and Governance, medyo ambitious sila, 12 yung kanilang na-identify na courses. No? So, depende, kaya nga parang we're having this conversation kasi you know best parang what you can do parang as a school. And we'll work with what you can do. So, yun, paiba-iba po. Sa SAS, 17 ang target nila. Sa SBG, 12. Sa School of Education, 15. Sa School of Nursing, 3. Tapos sa law school, observer status lang daw sila muna. But School of Engineering, that depends on what you can what you will decide on, and we'll work with that. And all the suggestions that you're making parang really do make sense, no? And so I'll just await siguro kung what you will decide on, and then parang that's what we will follow. Would that be okay, Dean Randall? Dean Rene?
Yeah, Father. Ano na lang kayo, Father, mag-meeting kasi we don't have enough time din, no, to discuss about it. Ano lang, Father, baka I think it's a good idea, Father. Why not? Because we are developing the courseware, i-encourage na lang natin ang faculty to develop the books, no, based on this courseware. Kasi ganun din naman ang gawin, di ba? We have to do it. The content is the same, no? Para we can really, para our faculty will be recognized really as authors, no?
Yeah. Pwede. I'll coordinate muna with the other offices, no. In fact, parang one of the things that I've done, pero depende if this fund will be approved, no. Is parang I applied for a funding through United Board para ma-incentivize yung kuha natin, give incentives for those developing yung courseware, no. Hopefully parang they will approve it. But I placed it in the proposal that I made and I submitted last early October.
By the way, Father, kasi nasabi kanina ni Doc Sisi about doon sa problema sa use of model, no? Especially kung mathematics, mga ganun. Is it possible ba na may external link na lang or ibang link to be connected to the para at least they can really easily develop, no? Para pwedeng ganon?
Pwede. Kasi may naman siya, parang in fact parang if there are external tools that could parang make that implementation easier. You could provide always a link through sa Moodle pa rin. No? Pero hindi ko lang alam kung ano yun kasi basically my field parang isn't familiar with it eh. Pero yun, parang any external tools can actually be linked through Moodle.
Father, I have a question.
Eugene, go ahead.
Father, I think some of our faculty right now are actually pre-recording their lecture. Can it be counted as part of the courseware, Father?
Oh yes, parang yes, in fact parang yun nga, parang if lectures could be pre-recorded, that would certainly be a relief for teachers, no. Ako ganon, that's what I do sometimes, no. I record it beforehand and then I just released it. I'm release lang siya na so yun, that's actually part of what you can develop sa courseware. Parang if you already have that beforehand, parang ang task na lang is how to make that more interactive. And Moodle has tools to convert that into more interactive videos. Pero kung meron ka na nun, parang okay na masyado yun, no? Parang miles ahead ka na of everyone else kung meron ka ng ganung
Okay, Father. Thank you, Father.
Okay, Jane. Okay. Sige po, Dean Randall, so I'll just leave it up to you muna so that you could discuss with your Mancom parang in terms of how you will plan this given the problem that we have and the specifications that we have, and the practical aspects of it. Parang then we can talk. Parang once you've agreed on how you'd like to do this courseware development project.
Ano na lang, Father, siguro yung specification, baka pwedeng makahingi ng copy doon.
Sige
So
po,
we can
I'll
also
share.
discuss about it, no, yung present mo kanina.
Yes, I actually have the tools there. And then I can share it initially muna. I can share it with you para makita niyo yung kuan.
So then siguro we can have our meeting, then we can make a proposal din, no, parang paano namin i-handle. Then we can again siguro discuss about it, no, kung how we can efficiently really manage these materials, no. Then ang ano kasi natin, dapat we can start already on the second sem kasi marami na talagang nagreklamo na estudyante, especially doon sa laboratory namin eh. Yan ang isang problema.
Sobra talaga. Sige, I'll just wait for your feedback, and then natin, we'll work with what you decide on.
Thank you, Father.
So once again, thank you very much for attending this meeting. Thank you for your suggestions, for your comments, and also for your dedication to making this work. We're all in this together, so to speak, no? And hopefully, parang we'll be able to carry it out successfully. I took note of the comments and the concerns that you've made, and I'll certainly raise it so that parang as we go through this process, we'll be able to slowly address, gradually address the concerns that you have raised.
Father, before we end, pictures daw, Father.
Ay, happy picture day.
Picture.
Marawatag ka ng kwan. Sige po, open cam tayo. Okay,
Mga attendance sa engineering, attendance.
Ana din ang engineering. Sige, kinsa may mag-picture ani?
Si Opip. Pip, ready na ka, Pip?
Yes, sir. Sige po. Okay, ready na. 1, 2, 3. Isa pa po. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone. Salamat.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father.
Bye-bye.
Fads.
Justin.
Fads. Kailan ka
Yes,
Melissa
Pip.
Solito, Fads?
Si?
Melissa Solito.
Melissa Solito.
Kabatch na ko, Pisay ba?
Nga naman.
Actually, namin diri sa wake sa iyang mom ba? Kasi pwede ma-include sa prayer intentions, Father.
Nagkakuha na ako ang pangalan sa iyong mama.
Ako i-chat, PM na ko sa imo, Father. Okay lang?
Sige, i-chat ikaw na lang nimo.
Yay, thank you, Kalifan. Bago
Okay,
lang may nagkuya, baka di ba lang po yung game god na wala ka.
Si Kuya Miko, ito to? Miko? Siya ba itong naka-cardiac arrest? Wala na mo nakaabot na to siya, no?
Wala.
Wala
Kaya
na?
mo ang among naabutan, oo.
Oo, tama. Ay, kami man na 4th year atong nisulod mo.
Opo.
Yes, kay Miko, kay dormer ba ato? Kay ilan mi ato kay siya man nagatudlo sa mga kanang mag-weights dito sa dorm sa una sa Pisay. Hilig man gina siya bodybuilding, ha?
Ahead siya sa inyo kaayo?
Kuan man to, 3rd year man to siya. So, 1st year bi sa una.
Bata pa, no?
Bata pa. Ambot marag naanagyud taan ng mga idara nga hinahinay na ba?
Lagi pa to eh. Prepare na ba?
Lagi. Ya, salamat Chin ha. Kinsa silang den ba ng mga faculty mo murag daga nag-pre-recording si den na kon ba
Yes,
mga videos.
actually, si Sir Salwage, abot kung kaila ka na niya. Isa na siya sa best teacher sa amo sa CE. Nagit siya, nagbuhat siya YouTube, murag tutorial.
Mas maayo to. Mas maayo to, mas dali. Ingana to.
Iyang gina-post.
Oo. Actually, mas
Pero
convenient kay
actually,
pag naanak-anak, sus. Relax na kayo picture.
Oo. Pero kanang kuan lang hago lang gyud siya pag first run. Kaya ang
Pagsugod,
preparation hago kayo siya, oo. Pero pag next
Pagsugod.
na pud siyang gamit, oo,
Wala
okay
na.
na, kanang medyo haya-haya na. Unless ang lisod lang sa pre-recorded lecture pads no kay kung naa kay gamay nga mistake, usabon nimo.
Kana lang. Pero pwede man ka mag-edit karon kuan. Pero
Pwede
ingana,
na pads.
pwede man ka mag-edit karon.
Kanang warag na alay portion sa imuhang pre-recorded as imuhang video na imong i-edit, pwede ganon?
Yes, pwede. Karon gani karong hapon kay nami training katong sa ubang instructional designers. Mag-train mi ani kanang magamit og kuan na para pag-produce og video lessons.
Tagaan pag nimo ana, Father, mag-agi pud ni ana.
Depende kung unsa inyong pan kay karon apil na ni sa atong among courseware development na process. So introducing mga tools that you can use to create content, no? Tapos parang strategies na appeal to sa kwan. So depende sa inyong mga maisgutan.
Warag mag-request ni ana upon request.
Basta maka-agree lang mo kung unsay inyong kwan, and then na naman ko'y murag program in terms of unsay mga kwan nato next steps.
Pero dili pa man like sa engineering pads no, dili pa man gud ningon required karong second sem.
Karong second sem wala ang gi-prioritize gyud namo katong core courses. So pero karon hopefully nga ma-introduce lang yung idea kay murag naggubot tanan, di ba? Sugod-sugod hinay para anam-anam lang ba para later dili na inanakalisod pag shift.
Pwede pud ba kaya ay like for example